Hey viewers, and welcome back to another episode of Kyle's Reviews. Well, this time, we're doing another double review, but with two recent DreamWorks films in this year. And to start things off, we have... Okay, Kyle, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. The first Megamind is one of those types of step-ups for DreamWorks films that was kind of unexpected. Especially when it's in its own initial release, where it didn't do too well at the box office, since it was overshadowed by Despicable Me, and it didn't really got much of an respect as compared to the other DreamWorks films. But that didn't change till time went on, until it got a huge cult following, as people saw this as the most underrated film DreamWorks has ever made, both with memes and by characters, by mostly in terms of favorites. But then, in this year, DreamWorks did something that we ourselves were probably most disrespected by.
Megamind is back,
I'm kind of a big deal.
and you're welcome.
Yes, when DreamWorks teamed up with Peacock, they had their own idea of making a Megamind sequel, and not just that, a TV series that takes place after the sequel. And as we all know today, that these two Megamind projects are an entire disaster and probably the most disrespectful things that DreamWorks have ever put out. Well, at least from what I've heard from the people, but you might think that, how do I feel this film in my perspective? You know what, I'm actually going to have to stick with the critics on this one and along with the audience, because this film... Yeah, you know how this review is going to turn out, so let's just get into this. The plot of the film is centered around Megamind. Well, after gaining his role of being the next main hero of Metro City, his old villain group, the Doom Syndicate, realizes this and think that it was Megamind's plan to trick everyone into thinking that he's a big hero. So they escape out of prison and they team up back with Megamind. And Megamind had to trick them into thinking that he's evil, so that way he can think of a plan to stop the Doom Syndicate from taking over Metro City. I'm sorry, but that alone, from what I just said, sounds like something I would hear from a fanfiction. And it's strange too, cause even the writers from the first film came back for the second, and yet they have no clue what even happened in the first film. Well, at least for the most part, anyways. Like, they even explain that Megamind used to be part of an old group, which is, of course, the Doom Syndicate. But not once in the first film did they ever mention that. Because we all know Metro Man and Megamind had been doing it out solo to solo, which is basically 1v1. And not once did we see a Doom Syndicate appear once in that film. It was Megamind and Minion. That's it. And even then, they even had to bring up this type of message about Megamind trying to treat others well and working together. But even that kind of feels like it was made for a different film than this. That feels like just pointless filler. And even if it sounds sweet, it just doesn't feel right for a Megamind sequel. And as we all know, the humor is what made us all remember about Megamind. It has such quotable memes, and even ones that can even give our much of a bigger memory of the joke from our nostalgia childhood. But in here, each joke is insufferable. I mean, they're not just bad, but they could be down to the point where they're basically being unbearable. There's one other thing that we remember about the first Megamind film, besides the story, it would have to be the characters that play in it. Each of them have their own unique personality, and even some of us can have one of them at least be our favorites. But in the sequel, they're now just down to the point where they became greatly written characters to just a bunch of bland tropes. Especially to see that how they just became nothing but a parody of their former selves. And this is especially the case with Megamind. Like, how did this man go from such a guy with such charisma as a villain, and actually has some pretty intelligent moments, to an absolute dumbass who has no idea what a toaster works, and even became a dickhead at some point? That makes you wish that he was better off being a villain than a hero. There's other characters too that got downplayed as well, like Minion's just basically who just became the friend of Megamind, who's now treated like a slave. But the one thing that questions to me is that why is Megamind such a dick to Minion? I mean, I know they didn't have a full-on healthy relationship in the first film, but the sequel had no excuse to see how toxic they became in the first half. And even Minion himself doesn't appear around most of the movie. As for the others besides them two, they're just not really much talking about. Like Roxanne is just trying to find herself a new purpose in the Metro City. The mayor is a bumbling idiot who just thinks that he's the mayor from Powerpuff Girls. And Kiko is basically the new character besides the Doom Syndicate, who's basically just want to bring up the old good old trend with the streaming. Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna get the kids relatable in terms of hip. Yeah. And since that it's going to those usual trends, that makes this film frighteningly outdated. And then I couldn't talk about the new characters if I didn't mention the Doom Syndicate. Now if there's one way I could describe them, it would be this. Bro thinks he's Victoria Vance. Bro thinks he's
Bon voyage.
Bro thinks he's Perfect Shadow. And Bro thinks he's Eruptor. Now before I end off this character topic, I want to mention another thing about them, which includes the actors. Now, it's obvious that the original actors like Will Ferrell, David Cross, and Tina Fey did not come back for this film, and were replaced with new actors that aren't really anywhere near the levels of the original ones as well. And you can tell that the way they impersonate them is not really that impressive. I mean, I could at least give them credit that they at least try to sound like them, even if it's not effective, but at least it's better than whatever the hell the Doom Syndicate voice actors had. Now, the animation in the first Megamind is one of those few types of films where it is like 10 years old as of now, or actually 14, and yet the animation still looks good to this day, and not as dated as anyone would ever thought it would be. But in the sequel, what even happened throughout the production of the film? Because not only do the visuals have a huge downgrade, they're at the point where just matching with the same quality as the writing. But if you want to know who made the animation, the visuals were produced by DreamWorks Animation Television, the same studio that brought to us like other series like the Kung Fu Panda series, the How to Train Your Dragon series, and even Troll Hunters. And before I start dumping on this film with its visuals, I'll at least give it credit that it at least tries to look like the Megamind with its style. Like at least for like the characters like Megamind, Minion, or as I should call them, Old Chub, and Roxanne, they at least still look true to like the original designs from the first film. And they do the same thing too with Metro City, but I wouldn't really count that one since Metro City was like the least interesting thing I would find from the first film, so that one was a red flag on its part as well. And while as the characters at least try to have the same style, the visuals just feel like they're completely stiff and lifeless. As well, they're not as expressive as they used to in the 2010 film. And with that limitation of the movements, the action scenes are quite slow paced and even limited where they just don't have much materials to make the action look good, with the exception of that one scene with a robo-bird for whatever reason. In conclusion, Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate is an absolute disgrace, both as a film and to the first Megamind that it's based off of, where it had no effort and no charm being put into it, with a predictably unengaging story, bad comedy, some choppy action scenes, along with downgrade animation, and terribly written characters that even have like the main characters being nothing but a parody of their former selves. Now it's easy to just skip this and just watch the first Megamind film instead. At least that'll give you more enjoyment than sitting through like an hour and 20 minutes of this monstrosity. And then it really sucks too, because Megamind is just now one of those underrated films where people want to give the film more recognition with a sequel, but then it becomes the other way around where it just becomes a different perspective of how people love that film. It happened with Hoodwinked, it happened with Surf's Up, and it definitely happened with Megamind. And seeing how both the sequels of Hoodwinked and Surf's Up got, it's not a surprise that Megamind has this type of treatment too. And that is enough to give this a 2 out of 10. Thanks a lot, DreamWorks. You can go fuck yourself for all I care. You know, after going through that, I think it's for the best we just lay off the heaviness on Megamind 2 and go to something that's more tolerable. With an example, Kung Fu Panda 4. Whether we're a DreamWorks fan or not, we cannot lie that Kung Fu Panda was definitely one of the golden standards of DreamWorks, from the first film being quite of a comedy gold, along with some very engaging action scenes, along with some heartfelt moments, and the same thing happens with the sequel, but it expands more on its universe and gives more depth to its main character, which is Po of course. And while the third film was a bit weak compared to the two, at least was still a solid watch for me and some other people out there. But now we have the fourth film. And immediately, when I heard the idea of making a Kung Fu Panda 4, I was a bit conflicted whether it would be like a good idea or not. But seeing how the 3 Kung Fu Panda films were for the standards of the DreamWorks franchise, then I could sort of see Kung Fu Panda 4 having a bit of a chance with this one. And how did I feel about it? The plot of the film is centered around Po. Well, now he's starting to become a new role from becoming the Dragon Warrior to the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. And while he tries to learn how to take that role, he decides to find himself a new Dragon Warrior, where he teams up with Shen to stop an evil villain named the Chameleon from gaining all the powers and abilities from each villain that Po has ever faced, and Po and Shen have to stop her in time. And the one big criticism that everyone would realize about Kung Fu Panda 4 is that it has a lack of substance in terms of the execution of the story. Because we all know the first 3 Kung Fu Panda films are quite well known for the big top quality of substance, with the exception of the third one having a bit of a decent one, but still passable, that at least gives more depth to the characters and see how the traits could work out throughout the film, along with giving out a bit of emotion and action. And while it does have that with some emotional scenes with Po and Shen, and the action itself being quite the highlight of the film, the pacing is what drives the film down from feeling like it feels like it just goes from one scene to another just to suit for the film's runtime. But I guess there is a few things that at least keep this film from being terribly written, is that at least the humor is okay. There were some times I did chuckle, mostly from Mr. Ping and Li Shan, but for the most part, the humor is not really the top priority, and it's only okay at best. As for the characters, they give off of the same quality as the story. Well, even if they do give off some charm and at least makes this film a lot more tolerable to sit through, it isn't really as effective as the previous film did, and kind of makes the roles in the film look more compared to how it was the previous films. With Po, at least gives off the same charm and same one as he always does in the previous films. Well, yeah, it might get tiring for some, but come on, it's Po. How could you not like him? And then there's also Shen, who's the side character that tags along with Po, and I kind of see some potential with her character, who at least give off the type that can help Po teaches other students to help. I know that's kind of the thing that happened in Kung Fu Panda 3, but at least for newbies, of course, other than just others. And while she did have a backstory that would have given a lot more growth to her character, they just played that off as a twist. And I'll at least give that there are some members of her group that are actually the thieves that give off some bit of tolerance to the film, like Han or the 3 bunnies. And Shifu doesn't really appear that much in the film, that's mostly given off in advice to Po, being the leader of the Valley of Peace. And even the 2 dads, Mr. Ping and Li Shan, do give off one of the better jokes of the film, and at least help the emotion to be a little more tolerable. And of course there's also the Chameleon, who's the main villain of the film, and how much of a downer she was. I do see the potential in the villain, like I said with Shen. And these 2 do have potential, especially with the Chameleon, who has an intriguing role with her abilities that could actually help her character more. But it just didn't really do much with her, as she's saying that she was too small to do Kung Fu, when Mantis is just literally there laughing in the corner. And it doesn't really help either that the most evil thing she did in the film is just push someone down the stairs, and that was it. I mean, I guess I'll give that her voice actor, Viola Davis, gives her a bit of light, and I will say the same for Awkwafina as Shen, surprisingly. But since the executive says that this will be the film with all the characters in it, there's also the Furious 5 that, well, they never appeared in the film. It will stay at the first half of Kung Fu Panda 4 that Po set them off in their journeys. But the thing is that there wasn't really much of a reason as to why they didn't show up in the film, either because that they just wanted to focus on the new story that they made, or that they just don't want to give too much of budget towards the new actors for the Furious 5 actors. And then there's also Tai Lung, who actually appears, as you notice from the trailer, and he sadly didn't give much of a role. He just played like a bunch of cameos, and at least he got some lines, like with Ian McShane doing a pretty solid role as of now, as I can tell he wanted to play Tai Lung for many years as to come. But Lord Shen and Kai, yes, they're actually in the film, have no lines whatsoever and just play off as cameos, while at least Tai Lung got some of the roles and felt at least a bit like a character rather than just a cameo. Even if the other bits of Kung Fu Panda 4, like the story and the characters, are average at best, the highlight of the film, I must say, is the animation, and as it still holds up the standards of the previous film had. And the new details and consistency that it adds do at least give up some new traits and expand the Kung Fu Panda universe, like different types of species in terms of new character design and even for like the backgrounds, mostly in Juniper Sea, that shows how large it is with a lot of things going on fast and move on to choreography is quite expressive with most of the characters, movements and ways of kung fu skills, and of course the action scenes is the highlight of the film, just to show how intense and quite comical the action can take place in. And while I'll give the comedian credit that what she lacks in writing, she gains in visuals, especially with her transformations that were inspired by AI, which kinda makes sense cause at least her transformations do look uncanny, and seeing how AI is uncanny nowadays, at least does make it quite accurate. In conclusion, Kung Fu Panda 4 is a disappointing sequel to a very beloved franchise that puts itself to be the weakest of the films. However, as a film on its own, it's fine. There are some problems with it that does kind of tone down the writing a bit, like with a weak story, and even like characters that have roles that are not as effective as the previous 3 films had. But there are at least some bits that at least keep this film from being okay and at least watchable, like some expressive animation and some very talented action scenes that help with comedy and the intensity as well. The humor being somewhat decent, and even the score is what actually helps the film to feel more expressive and lively, to at least keep us a bit anticipated. Now, if you're in for like a film that's all about action, then this would be for you, but as a sequel on its own for those Kung Fu Panda fans, I would recommend to keep your expectations a bit low, since it kind of would give you a bit of the same reaction as I did when I first watched this. Well, even if it is quite disappointing, it's still passable on its own, and it is enough for me to give this a 6 out of 10. But to be fair, I'll take this film any day over Megamind 2. God, what the hell was DreamWorks even thinking? Next time on Kyle's Reviews is...
No, please, no! Ow, it's so hot! Ow, it's really hurting! Ow, ow, ow!
You saw nothing.
And...